You're listening to the Options Insider Radio Network, the home of the Options Podcast. For more quality options programs, visit theoptionsinsider.com or search for Options Insider Radio Network in your podcast provider of choice. Listeners can also access all of our programming through our mobile app available in the iTunes and Google Play stores. Select programs are also available via live stream at mixlr.com/options-insider. That's mixlr.com/options-insider. Don't forget to follow along with your favorite programs and submit your own questions for the hosts at twitter.com/options, stocktwits.com/options, facebook.com/theoptionsinsider, or via questions at theoptionsinsider.com. And now, it's time for the show that breaks down the options market from unusual activity alerts to market analysis, strategy overviews, listener questions, and much more. If it involves puts and calls, then our all-star panel will break it down. It's time to hit the Option Block with your host, Mark Longo from the Options Insider Media Group and co-hosts Uncle Mike Tusaw from St. Charles Wealth Management, Mark the Greasy Meatball Sebastian from OptionPit.com, Andrew the Rock Lobster, Joe Benazzi from OptionPit.com, and Henry the Flowmaster Schwartz from SIBO. The Option Block is brought to you by SIBO. SIBO's suite of S&P 500 index options, SPX and mini S&P 500 XSP options, allows traders to speculate on the direction of the market, generate income, and hedge for downside protection of their portfolio of stocks. No matter what kind of trader you are, there's plenty of useful information to take the guesswork out of creating your portfolio strategy and to help you make more educated moves in the market. Visit www.sibo.com/SPX today to learn more. The views expressed herein are those of the speakers and do not necessarily reflect the views of CBOE Global Markets Incorporated or any of its subsidiaries, collectively CBOE. The information provided is for general education and information purposes only. There are important risks associated with transacting in any of the CBOE products or any of the digital assets discussed here. Before engaging in any transactions in those products or digital assets, it is important for market participants to carefully review the disclosures and disclaimers contained at www.cboe.com/US_disclaimers. These products and digital assets are complex and are suitable only for sophisticated market participants. These products involve the risk of loss, which can be substantial and, depending on the type of product, can exceed the amount of money deposited in establishing the position. Market participants should put at risk only funds they can afford to lose without affecting their lifestyle. And now, get ready to hit the Option Block.
All right, everybody. That music means we are back once again. It is Thursday. It is time to roll out episode 2 of the bi-weekly options extravaganza known around the globe as the Option Block. My name, of course, is Mark Longo from theoptionsinsider.com, as well as from the network upon which so many of you are binging, mainlining these days. Welcome to all the folks who've been joining us on the old Pro lately. A sweet Pro Q&A yesterday. Triple header on the network yesterday. I still got some voice left, though, so we still have enough to power through today and tomorrow. Of course, if you want to check out the Pro, you want to check out the Pro Q&As, you want to get options oddities after vol views, tomorrow should be a banger. Be joined by our good buddy, Mr. Matt Amberson from ORATS. Whenever he joins us, there's always some wild activity. He's doing a doubleheader tomorrow as well, vol views and options oddities. So if you want to get at the unusual trades that he's bringing to the table, and he brings some wild ones, then head on over to the Pro, theoptionsinsider.com/pro. Remember, get your name in the hat soon. February rapidly drawing to a close. That means the February Pro, easy for me to say, the February Pro Trading Crate is almost upon us. So get your name in the hat. And you too can win the fabulous prizes locked therein. Let's see who's joining us on the old program today. First, out to the quiet, the sleepy, dare I say it, tranquil hamlet known as St. Charles, where we are joined once again by the Uncleist of Mikes, Mr. Uncle Mike Tusaw from St. Charles Wealth Management. Uncle Mike, welcome back to the Thursday show, sir.
You dare say such a thing, and you are correct. It is very quiet and tranquil out here.
I didn't say anything about rickets. I didn't go down that road. We'll save that for another episode. But yes, quiet and tranquil out there in the provincial hamlet. And then joining us from the polar opposite of that, not a provincial hamlet, but the Mecca known as New York, where he is beaming in from SIBO East, our good buddy, the Flow Master, Mr. Henry Schwartz. From SIBO, Mr. Flow Master, welcome back to the Thursday show, sir.
Thank you, Mark. Great to be on. And yes, this is definitely the opposite of a hamlet, but things in New York are great. It's finally not as cold as it was. Markets are busy. There's a lot going on. I'm excited to dig into the numbers today.
All right, then let's do it. It is time for the trading block.
It's time to break down the latest topics, trades, and trends in the world of options. It's time for the Trading Block.
All right, everybody, welcome to the Trading Block, the portion of the show where we break down what the heck is trading out there. And you know, ever since our last show on Monday, listen, Uncle Mike, he can't stop from just shedding tears day after day. There's been a color on our screens that he's not quite accustomed to anymore. I think he's thrown out all the red crayons and markers in his house. He's all green all the time, but that's not what we've been having of late. We've been having a lot of red, a lot of tumult, a lot of dust up in the markets of late. That's been mostly the color we've been seeing since the Monday show, and that continues today. In fact, it came out of the gate hot yet again to the downside, getting spooked by tariffs yet again. NVDA last night as well. We'll talk about that in a second. But the S&P getting driven. We are, of course, well off of the all-time highs that Uncle Mike proclaimed not that long ago. Well below the 6,000 level in SPX at this point. We were threatening to hit 5,900 this morning. S&P selling off, bouncing right around the 59.23 level, somewhere in that range. And then turning back around as we're kicking off the show, back to about 59.5, still off about 0.1%, pretty close to it. It seemed like the old fix was in, the turnaround was in, and we were going to tick green right as the show was starting. Instead, no, we're hanging out back mixed to mostly red. S&P, like we said, off about 0.1%. NASDAQ off about 0.2%. So once again, leading the charge to the downside, and the Dow bucking the trend up a little over 0.5%. And our old buddy VIX Cash, as we kicked off the show, a little bit north of the 19 handle, 1910. That puts us up about 1.6 points from where we were this time last week. As the show has commenced, we're down to about the 19 handle now out there. Of course, we've had a range since the last time we chatted as well, getting north, not just of the 20 handle, but north of 21 in VIX Cash. About 21 and a third is where we topped out before coming back down a little bit to the 19 handle right now. So it's been a frothy time since our last show, also reflected in the old VVIX, the vol of vol, not just at 100, not even at 104 where it was on the Monday show, but all the way up to a frothy 108, up 4 points again from the Monday show. So a lot going on, a lot of red on the screen, a lot of tumult, a lot of concern out there in the broad markets. Let's kick things off out there in the land of SIBO East, Mr. Flowmaster, sir. What's been catching your eye this week?
Well, you know, it's interesting, right? We're coming to the final day of February is going to be tomorrow. And it's not the kind of month that it was in January, that's for sure. This looks like it's going to be a red month unless we get some sort of monster rally. We're finishing up with the S&P down a little bit over 1% on the month, NASDAQ worse. And, as you mentioned, Dow's up today. It's been kind of a funky week or two. VIX actually, I believe we closed over 20, maybe on 1 or 2 days. So, there's definitely been some tumult, as you said, some concern. We haven't seen any panic. I think actually maybe we didn't close at 20. I think 2 days ago we closed at 1943. Certainly more concern. I think that a lot of it's coming from the super outperformance of U.S. markets for one thing. This U.S. exceptionalism, led by NVDA, for example, and a few of these high tech stocks. I think people felt like this is getting a little tired, and so there's definitely some reshuffling. The tariffs and action out of Washington doesn't Well, adds to the uncertainty. So, one thing that jumps out at me is, although the U.S. U.S. averages are all kind of down on the month, Europe and Asia are pretty much green. Not Nikkei, but China. Basically, everything I see in Europe is up a couple percent for February. So it's just been kind of a reshuffling, and I think that's. I tell you, I like a pullback because if you have some money parked on the side or ready to deploy, it's tough to buy when the market's at all-time highs. So you can kind of dribble in a little bit here and there because I still think especially if you're thinking long-term, you still want to be long the market, but but it's been a little opportunity, right? VIX getting up towards 20. We hadn't seen that in months. So more concerned, but I think overall the picture's more kind of active, high dispersion. That's one of the reasons that VIX didn't, get up into the 25-30 zone, is that you still have a lot of sectors performing very differently. And like the, Dow versus S&P is a good example. Like the correlation there is pretty weak for the last couple of days, because it's the S&P that's gotten smoked this month. Not so much the industrials or the small caps.
And you talked about the big dog, which is NVIDIA. I guess we can just bring that up now. Kind of a wild journey overnight. We were in the middle of our pro Q&A yesterday and was popping off. We were so hot and bothered in the pro Q&A, completely forgot about NVIDIA. But yeah, it was popping off wild. It ended the day yesterday, 129 and a third, shooting up overnight and into the morning here today, almost 135, 134.87, and then just falling right off a cliff with the rest of the market coming in this morning, falling off from about right around 135 down to about 126 and a half. They tried to rally it up to 127.40 and then right back down to about 126, almost even. Starting to rally a little bit again right now, up a little over 2 points to 128.18 from that nadir. Obviously still down net on the day, but yeah, a wild journey out there in NVIDIA, as you put it, Henry, the American exceptionalism. At a certain point, people expect exceptional things, and if you give them good but not mind-blowing things, they're gonna take your stock to the woodshed, and that's apparently what's been happening out there. Anything catching your eye in the big dog, the king of the earnings season, NVIDIA, over the last 24 hours, Henry?
Yeah, I mean, the straddle went out last night around 9%. I did not really see, any massive trades that surprised me. We saw some giant flexes. We saw 90,000 lot roll in flexes yesterday, but that's most likely just related to a stock loan transaction. So I really didn't detect any real strong positioning into it. I did hear some chatter of, people were like, listen, if it's a really bad number for some reason, it really could spill over into S&P world. So there's a little bit of that, but in the end, it's kind of like a meh. I think they added a penny dividend, which I guess opens it up to some types of accounts that are only allowed to buy dividend-paying stocks. And we're in a way, even though we're up a little bit stronger this morning than we are right now. We're basically flat. It's a little bit of an exhale on getting through that.
Penny dividend. Why didn't you say so? Excuse me while I go buy all the NVIDIA in the room. That's hilarious. I love that out there. Were you slinging some NVIDIA last night? I'm sure you were watching it, listeners. It's kind of the belle of the ball these days. Mr. Uncle Mike, same question for you, sir. Actually, a multi-part question. First off, if you have any thoughts on the big dog that is NVIDIA, have at it. And then B, obviously, it's been a challenging couple of days for you since the end of the last show. I know you've been shedding a few tears here or there. You're probably a little bit uncomfortable with all this red on the screen. So what are your thoughts about that? And then C, anything else catching your eye in these wild markets right now, sir?
All right, and so I'll address the market itself here in a second, but I'll just start with, good gosh, Mark, come on now. We're positive on the day again. You're spewing all this negativity that we're down 0.1%, and now we're positive, and we're within 3% of an all-time high. And man, you have a real negative tilt on things. You're sounding worse than the Rob Klopster.
That's saying quite a bit, sir. I don't know if I'm quite that dour.
Nah, I guess maybe you're not quite that doom and gloom. But anyway, so a couple thoughts on NVIDIA. I think it's kind of the law of large numbers might start to come into play with NVIDIA. And it's kind of making me think, it's reminding me of Apple a few years back. But if you go back to the archives of the first couple hundred shows, it was typically Mark and Mark making fun of me for having so much Apple exposure, and it was collared, and they'd always say, well, how could it possibly go up anymore? And my response would be, because it's Apple. And then the next week, how could it still go up anymore? And I would say, because it's Apple. And that was a lot of how we built this show, quite frankly. But with that being said, I eventually pulled out of the extent of the exposure I had with Apple just because I referred to it as my innovation index, in that Apple, they've already changed the world. How can it continue to go higher? Well, Apple did go higher. And I almost think NVIDIA is going to be at a point kind of like that in some ways, in that the law of large numbers takes over, and that if you're going to be that big of a company to where you go up, I forget what it was, like 15-fold in the last couple of years, then you can't go up forever. But yet somehow Apple did. And so how did Apple do it? And this is what I think is kind of interesting about NVIDIA with the law of large numbers. And I'd have to look at it a little bit more, but at some point, maybe they want to start, if they have enough of a cash position, perhaps maybe they want to do what Apple did and just start buying the stock, or buying their own stock and driving the stock price up that way. That's another thought with which they could do potentially. I'm not sure, but it's something that if I were a NVIDIA investor, which I guess we are to some extent, that's something with which I would definitely be looking at. Now, in terms of the market itself, Mr. Negative, let's have some conversation on that. First off, we were at an all-time high in the markets roughly 12 days ago. I'm looking on my chart, February 19th. We were at all-time highs. It was exciting. I think it was even a few days before that, I got to actually call a live all-time high as it hit on the option block. So we're not that far off from that ultimate excitement with which we had. And we're about roughly 3% off of the all-time highs. So it's not like we're in an awful spot by any means. 3% pullback over the course of a couple of weeks, and we've had a 40% rally over the course of the last few years. That's not exactly a bad thing by any means. Whenever you have markets that move a lot, you're going to have pullbacks. It's just kind of a harsh, cruel fact of life, but that's the way with which it is. The other things that are catching my eye, bonds have actually, they're not rallying today, but they have caught a little bit of a bid recently. So they're getting a little bit of action going their way. And then the other thing with which I've caught, or I'm seeing, is there's this thing, what's it called? I have a website on it. Bitcoin. Yeah, that. That's actually not going up. It's actually pulling back and going down. Imagine that. It could actually happen. Imagine that. So we do have that. And then just in general, I think the theme that we're seeing in this market right now is that it's not an overall market pullback per se. It's that a few stocks, some stocks are doing really poorly, some stocks are doing okay, and the stocks that are doing poorly are the ones that are pulling this back. And so you could look at this as maybe the market shifting, and this could be something to where we could be ready for another leg up in this market. And that's the bull point of view. The bear point of view? Just buy some puts if you're concerned with it. That's my point of view as a bear. And that's what I'm seeing today, Mark.
All right, Perma Bull, let's see what else we've got cooking out here. Is it a hot day from an overall volume perspective across the options landscape? The answer is yeah, it's a bit of a banger. VIX right now, just a tick under 700K, 698, including, this might be one of my favorite prints of the week, Mr. Flowmaster. I'm sure you saw this as well. By the way, the VIX ADV right now, 767, so coming back down a little bit. I got a feeling after today that might go back the other way. But looks like we have this one print of 52,477 of, I guess you can call it a strip, a ladder, call it what you will. Super Tusaw-esque stupid. We got 52,477 of the May doubles in VIX going up 55 cents. Same number of the 60s for 45 cents. Same number of the 65s for 39 cents. Same number of the 70s for 35 cents. And to cap it all off, exact same number, 52,477 of the 75s for 31 cents, all opening, all across the board. Mr. Flowmaster did this, I guess let's just call it a VIX strip. Did this come across your radar, sir? 250,000 contracts going up in this upside fund, sir?
Yeah, it's an interesting one. I mean, they are buying everything. We can see that in the open close data and in Trade Alert. I mean, it's $10 million, almost $11 million in premium for this. I don't know what we would call it, a super stupid. I guess it's a hedge for some bad things happening in the springtime, or some extreme volatility. I mean, we have seen. I mean, you've mentioned this. That VIX average daily volume has been ticking up because of the fact that for the last 5 months or so, the connection between volatility and market direction has picked up. Meaning, when the market sells off, we are seeing some decent vol spikes. Right? We had a couple of years where that wasn't really happening, and people were getting a little bit frustrated in owning the Vega. But now that correlation is solid, or has been, people are taking advantage of the fact that with VIX you could get a nice big jump on a sell-off. So it's a big trade. It is definitely it is all opening, and I'll have to look back to see if it's possibly kind of a repeat pattern, and they're just kind of putting on the hedge they prefer again. I mean, that's what it looks like. It looks like somebody's hedging a very large kind of equity portfolio with VIX calls, which we always talk about. VIX calls and S&P puts are pretty similar in a crash. You're going to make money on both if you own them, but there's a big difference, which is that VIX, you don't need to adjust your strike as the market moves around.
Yeah, whenever it's a super stupid like this, we call it a Tusaw-esque super stupid, because the man never met a stupid he didn't like. And when it's multiple legs like this, it is a super Tusaw. Super stupid. You like this, listeners? We got 5 strikes, roughly 50 grand each, 50,000 contracts, I should say, each. Just to lighten up the upside here in VIX land. Gotta love it. That's what makes VIX fun. Prints like that, listeners. Spy, no slouch today. Spy says, oh yeah, you like VIX? Check me out. Nearly 6.5 million contracts on the tape. The ADV, 8.19 million. I got a feeling that's going up after today as well. And then the S says, hey, I can be fun too. 2.1 million contracts on the tape for the S. I'll have to go look and see if I can find a super stupid in the S, but 2.1 million contracts. The S is not messing about today. That's well over a quarter, is over a third of a million more than we expect this time of the show. And the ADV right around 3.4 million. Small caps, they're not being left out of the party either. Exactly a million, 1.0 million contracts on the tape as of right now. The ADV, 1.32 million. Yeah, they're going to get there pretty darn soon. Wonder if there's any super stupids going up, and I'm going to be on the hunt for super stupids for the rest of the show, listeners. And then the Q's saying, you know what? We are also a fun guy, and 3.53 million, little Friends throwback there. 3.53 million, the ADV 4.15 million. So the Q's on the rampage. So Tusaw can say what he likes about, oh, the markets are good and we're close. The markets were spooked this morning. These numbers reflect that. And just nothing else, the super stupid. Who puts up a super stupid if you think things are awesome? All right. To the single names we go. We can talk super stupids the rest of the show. Don't tempt me. I might just do it, listeners. But off to the single names today. What do we got? Lighten it up. Tusaw was talking some smack about his beloved Bitcoin, and that is reflected in our number 10, the monster, a.k.a. MSTR, not looking as monstrous today. 256.58 off 670 or 2.5% over the last 5 days. Man, that perpetual motion machine, it has to stop at some point, right? And seems like they ran into a few hiccups over the past week. Over the past 5 days, it is off $71.21, or about almost 22% just in the last 5 days. So, the perpetual Bitcoin motion machine giveth, and now it taketh away out there. If you look at it from its peak, it's off over 50%, 55%. You live by the sword here. This sell-off keeps going. It's going to be interesting to see what kind of unwind has to happen over there. You can't live on the bleeding edge forever unless you have those crazy gains. The monster, number 10, 369 on the tape. Number 9, keeping it in Uncle Mike land, crypto land. It is Mara. 387 on the tape. Things are wild and looking kind of red in crypto land when Mara is back below the 15 handle. In fact, how low do we go? It got down to 1208. If you've been listening to the crypto rundown at all, Mara's kind of locked between 15 and 30 for the better part of the last couple of years. It's been one of the better range-bound plays out there. You could sell the 15 puts, you could sell 30 calls, rinse and repeat over and over again and do pretty well. And it's been threatening 30 not that long ago, and then we got down to 1208 just over the past month. Or just over the past week, I should say. Let's see. When did we top out at? It was in December. It got up to almost 30 again. So it's been kind of drifting lower ever since. Again, there's been a fascinating name, Mara. You don't see it in our top 10s too often, and usually when it is, something's going on. Something's afoot in the crypto space. Today, managing to get some back, getting a $1.40 back or 11%. But if you know Mara, it is down in some depths. I think there's still size open on that 30 strike to the upside as well. So got a ways to go to get back there. Number 8, AMD, 102 and a third, off 2 and a third today, or about 2%. Good for number 8, 418 on the tape. Number 7, Neo. Man, what a wild time it is in EVs across the board. 495, up about a quarter today, or nearly 5%. On the year, it's been kind of a wild ride. 5 3/4 a year ago. Then they crushed it down to 381 in April. They rallied it all the way in October 2nd to 771. Since then, it's kind of struggled. They crushed it in just a couple of weeks ago, mid-February actually, about $4 exactly. So by that math, it's up nicely since then, about $1 or 25%. Good for number 7 today, Neo, 427 on the tape. Number 6, the Amazonians, 213.70, off about 70 cents or about 1/3%. So kind of a rounding error for them, but they've had a wild day. 219.97 to the upside, 211.60 to the downside. So wild range out there. Good for number 6, the Amazonians. 444 on the tape. Number 5, it's the Fruit Company, 241 3/4. Bucking the trend, actually up today, up about $1 1/3 or about 0.5%. That said, it's been kind of a rough week for them. They've sold off about $4, which is kind of par for the course with Apple. They're very much a buy the rumor, sell the fact name. And now that we've seen the new little iPhone taking a little bit of a hit out there, makes some sense. Got down as low as, it looks like about 239, almost in a half this week. 239 1/3, actually, before getting some back today. Good for number 5, 548 on the tape. Number 4, good old SMCI, also coming back down the other side. 45.13, off almost exactly $6, nearly 12% today. My goodness, they are coming back down today. SMCI, number 4. Number 3, we talked about this name a few times. 89.48 is where Palantir is trading right now. Good for number 3, 586 on the tape. What a wild time. The spin out there. We got Frank in our chat saying, what about those Feb 72 puts? I think you meant 72 puts. 27s would be wild too, Frank, but 72 puts are going to go out worthless. Yeah, we'll get to that in a little bit, but it does seem like 72 might have been a bit of a bridge too far. 89.64, how low do we get this week? They took it all the way down to about 85 2/3. So we were certainly a heck of a lot closer than we were a week and change ago when we were around 120. But still wild times. Palantir, number 3, 586. Number 2, speaking of wild times, if you just pulled up this show, maybe you were on vacation for the last week and you're hearing me quote Tesla, you might be like, what are you talking about? What level is that? 289.67, off about $1.13 today. It's kind of a rounding error today. It's had almost a 17 handle range on the day, 297 1/4 to the upside, 280.88 to the downside. So a wild time. And obviously, just been a rough go. They were at about $400 almost exactly a month ago, listeners. So they're off fully 105 handles, or about 26%. Yeah, you can only make money on credits and Bitcoin for so long, and obviously the Bitcoin end ain't looking that good right now. And obviously there's other irons in the Musk fire as well. Either way, man, Tesla bulls having a rough go of it over the past month. Number two, 2.12 million. Then you know what it is. Big dog coming off of their big night, should be their big Oscar moment. It's NVIDIA earnings. They should be dominating the tape, and they are, but to nowhere near the degree that they have in the past. 4.66 million right now for NVIDIA. We just talked about them earlier. Having a hard time finding their footing after a decent but not spectacular number. 127.70 off about 360 or 2.75%. It's had a almost exactly $10 range on the day. 135.01 is the high. 125.28 is the low. So a wild range out there for NVIDIA. Have you been slinging some NVIDIA? We're talking some interesting NVIDIA calendars and diagonals yesterday on the Pro Q&A. Have you folks been up to any fun out there in NVIDIA? It's been a hot name, or I should say a hot week on the earnings front. Outside of NVIDIA, I mean, NVIDIA takes up all the oxygen in the room, but there's still some bangers popping off. We had lows. We had Snowflake yesterday. That one's hot, then it's cold, then it's hot again. Is it hot again? We can find out. Salesforce also yesterday. Domino's, a pizza on Monday, and Planet Fitness, Home Depot, and Krispy Kreme, and Intuit crushing it earlier this week as well. I guess a little bit of TurboTax fun going on out there for Intuit. And because we like you folks, hot off the presses from our friends over there at As I said, Matt will be joining us for a doubleheader tomorrow. We got some earnings move results, and earnings season reports for you. TKO, the parent company of Uncle Mike's beloved WWE, a company I'm embarrassed to say I have shelled out way too much money for tickets over the past year. Don't even ask me how much it costs for those Royal Rumble tickets, listeners. But TKO, they've been printing money of late. Apparently not as much anymore. They had earnings last night after the bell. 159.5 is where they were going into their announcement. 146.20 when we pulled up this report this morning. They have since popped about $1.40 from there, 147.66, but still getting shellacked. They were pricing in 6.8%. At that point, they were off about 8.4%. They're off about 7.5% now. So this name's been on a wild run. They had, takeover corporate actions with the parent company of Endeavor spinning off some stuff. So you could see that it's had some interesting runs coming back off that, about 30 handles off that. Now, I got up to 175. It's also about double where it was where Vince got forced out about a year ago and had to vomit all his stock at about 75 to 80. So, yeah, it's had a nice run since then, due for a little bit of a pullback. But, man, this is a banger. Snowflake, are they hot again? Let's find out. Let's see, the 166.19 is where they were trading going into their announcement yesterday. They were pricing in 11.9%. They delivered 8.6%, but spoiler alert, they are still hot again. 181.25 right now, up about 9% or 15 handles. So apparently nothing is cold about Snowflake. They are hot. Oh, there we go. Snowflake, hot again. And then Uncle Mike's favorite, our beloved Mara. We're just talking about them. They were yesterday after the bell as well. They were at 12.45 going into their announcement. They were pricing in 10.6%. As of this report this morning, they were at 13.41. They had underperformed. They'd only delivered 7.7%. Re-rack that to right now, they're at about 13.90, up about $1.50. Now they're up nearly 12%, so they have outperformed. So, yeah, Mara apparently managing to claw their way out, but record revenue, analysts expected a loss. Well, there you go. There you go. Maybe the worm turning out there. Salesforce yesterday, 307.33 is where they were going into their announcement. They're pricing in 8.7%. They delivered only 3.9%. So a little bit of underperformance. And as of right now, they're at 304 exactly. So they're only off 1% exactly. So talk about you sold some premium out there. You are living the dream. And of course, the big dog, NVIDIA. We just talked about it. Going into their number, 131.28. They were pricing in almost 10%, listeners, 9.4%. As of the report, they had only delivered 3.3%. As of right now, of course, they're off about 3.1%. But as I mentioned, they've had a $10 range today. So if you were judicious in your exits, you could have gotten out. And if you sold premium, you are a more daring fellow than I right now. And you probably sweated it a little bit, even though you're coming back to looks like equilibrium now. So a hot time out here in in earnings. Let's do one more really quickly just for fun. Let's go to PZZA is Papa John's popping off before the bell today. 46 and a quarter is where they were pricing in. They were pricing in 8.3%. My goodness, they're at 47 and a half now, up about $1.25, not even 3%. So they are dramatically underperforming. So you know what? For all of our outperformance we've seen of late, and we've seen a ton of it, as witnessed by our season, still hanging out at 120%. That is already above our long-term average, which is already ridiculous, lofty, dizzying at a 117. And yet some of the big names over the last week kind of underperforming, which is kind of interesting. We've been saying for a while, this worm has to turn eventually. You can't keep buying premium every earnings cycle and just have it be a home run every time, like it has been for the better part of the last year and a half. And yet, so far in aggregate, the worm has yet to turn, listeners. But you know what? It's time for us to turn to the odd block.
It's time to break down the most interesting, unusual, and downright questionable options activity that's been identified by theoptionsinsider.com. It's time for the Odd Block.
All right, listeners, I've been doing a lot of talking. It's time to let the Flow Master take the reins with some weird, some wild, some fun paper. What did he spot for us to kick things off today? Let's go out to, this might be a newcomer. The name sounds vaguely familiar. Maybe we've hit on it once, let's say a couple of years ago. I mean, a slot machine name, International Game Technology, ticker symbol IGT. This is a British name, 18 and a quarter, off about a dime today. So not a banger day for them. Also not exactly a banger year. They're off $7.50 or nearly 30% on the year. They were 25 and 2/3 a year ago. They got up to their high for the year a couple days later, 27 and a quarter. Ever since then, it's been pretty much mostly downside. If you want to have a little bit of a glass half full, they have rallied over the last couple of weeks. They got down to their low for the week, or the year, I should say, of 1642 on February 12th. Since then, they've been rallying almost $2, about $1.80. So there's your glass half full. Mr. Flowmaster, what'd you spot out here in everyone's favorite IGT?
Well, before I get into that, I got to say, I was on vacation last week, which is why I missed the podcast, and Kevin and Carter did an amazing job. But that means I also missed Friday, which was a pretty insane day. I saw I did check the market, of course, because I can't, live without doing that every hour or so. And we set a volume record of 83.3 million contracts on Friday. That blew through that was almost 10 million contracts above the prior record. So, I've mentioned a few times that I think we'll see a 100 million contract day this year, and that just kind of shows you that it'll basically, we'll get there. It wouldn't take much to get through that. So really pretty amazing performance. We saw and a bunch of products hit new volume records. SPX, I believe, was 4.736 million. It was, by my count, it was slightly under the existing all-time record, but I might be off. Sometimes you end up with putting the overnight flow into the wrong place. So amazing volume, and I'll put out some February stats after the market tomorrow. So in the odd block for today, International Game Tech. This was yesterday. Somebody bought 8,000 the July 20 calls around 11 a.m., just before 11 a.m. They paid 85 cents when the stock was 1807. That was for about 6,000 of them. They paid $1 for the last couple thousand, and the stock was already at 1850 when they did that, just literally a minute later. So it looks to me like it's one big trader. They definitely had to pay up to finish the trade, but that's call volume is 25 times the average daily volume in this name. It's not one of the most active stocks out there. The put volume was virtually nothing. I think 150 contracts. So they made about $100,000 on the 8,000 lot. And stocks back in a little bit, but I think that gaming and gambling is it is one of the big themes this year, right? We in our world it spills in the form of event contracts, But, I think everybody agrees that, with the legalization of online betting in many states in the U.S. and DraftKings and all the sports betting apps, like it is kind of, and even Robinhood kind of almost letting people bet on the Super Bowl just the beginning of this month. Things are kind of coming together. So I think there will be some plays in the gaming world. I actually was looking at Penn, had some interesting flow today, and even though IGT came back in, is back down about a dime. I actually went and got all the components for one of the gaming ETFs, and I'm going to basically make a watch list of these things and kind of try to figure out if there's something something worth jumping into. Penn had earnings before the open today, so that stock's up a little bit, but so that could be feeding into the volume, but the volume in Penn is also about 3 times normal. So, this is a bullish trade. It's July, meaning that they're giving it, 3 or 4 months of time. I think it might be worth leaning into this position, one way or another, whether it's in the form of the stock or maybe a vertical call spread. I'll take a look at kind of what call spreads show up cheap, and maybe think about putting something on.
Yeah, interesting. They had a nice move. Obviously, they bought some duration, so we kind of like that. All the way up to $1 for the 20s. It seems kind of rich, but hey, they're looking pretty good right now. If the Rock Lobster were here, he would say they've passed the first sniff test when the stock was around about $18, now up to about 18 and a half. So they've had a nice little run in the stock, 18 and a quarter right now. You like those, listeners? July 20s for around 85 cents to $1. Not terrible. I need to dig into this name a little more. Like I said many times on oddities, you got to give yourself some time for some of these trades, though, to work, so at least they're not spending that kind of money for a call that expires in a week or two. They're getting all the way through July. They're probably going to have an announcement, or maybe 2, in that time frame. So interesting stuff. Let's keep rolling. Let's go out to some little name. I believe this is a French cheese manufacturer called NVDA. Is that correct, Mr. Flowmaster? What'd you spot out there?
Well, this is really just to show that, this has been the story, right? I mean, the stock was up at 135 this morning, but, now it's down, 3%. It was the most active symbol for options for all of 2024. And, there's plenty of big trades going off in there. This one just kind of piqued my interest because somebody paid 57 cents for 17,000 of the NVIDIA regular March 153 calls. They look opening to me, although there's so much activity in there. It's possible. It's possible that it's adjusting something. But, I don't think that, as much as I think we're seeing a healthy kind of reversion, right? The question was always kind of, is the rest of the market going to catch up to the Mag 7 and, these super, super big tech names, or are they going to come back down to the level of the market? And, kind of what we're seeing is I think what we want, which is they need to come down a little bit and the rest of the market can things can equalize a little bit. So even though we had a little pullback this month, I mean, we're still up 2% on the year for the S&P. So, and it's very early in the year. So this just looks like a bullish little nugget in there. I've never owned NVIDIA, so I'm sad that I've missed out on this crazy return. The range on the stock is 76 to 150. So, this is somebody basically looking for that kind of a little bit of a rebound, I think.
Yeah, listeners, you like those 153s expiring in March for 57 cents, about nearly 18,000 times. I got a feeling I'll have to go pull them up. I got a feeling you could probably get them for cheaper now if you do like them. So that's the upside of a little bit of downside at the end of the day. But intriguing stuff out there. I mean, it sounds like a distant strike, but then again, we were threatening that not too long ago. You get a couple of good headlines, and bam, NVIDIA could be up there again. We've seen a lot of wild paper in NVIDIA of late. I mean, we just scratched the surface on the wild stuff. This one, by way of comparison, fairly level-headed and reasonable, all things considered. You got a decent amount of time, not the most expensive. So yeah, not the wildest thing we've seen. And let's get out of here on this one from the Flowmaster as well. Let's go out to a name we don't talk about too much. Uber sucks up all the oxygen in the room, but Lyft getting our attention today. Lyft right now, $13.86, up about exactly $1 or a little over 8%. On the year, it's been an interesting year. A year ago, they were 16.66, and they rallied last March to about almost 21 bucks, and then they came for it, crushed it down on August 5th. Right after that, they got down to their low for the year, right around 9 bucks. Then they rallied it hard. Right after the election, they got up to about 18.60 again, and then once again, they couldn't maintain the upside, and they kind of fell off a cliff again. They went out the year right around 13 bucks, 12.90. And have kind of been vacillating in that range pretty much ever since. They did briefly flirt with 15 bucks back a couple of weeks ago, then promptly gave it up. So it's kind of been an interesting year here for Lyft, kind of stuck. They're up net right now, 19 cents on the year. But Mr. Flowmaster, what'd you spot out here? Looks like somebody thinks they might be moving a little bit.
Well, yeah, this is one of several blocks in the Lyft March and May calls. The block I picked is the March 14F call. Somebody paid 40 cents for 5,000 to open. That was when the stock was 13.69. But a minute later, we saw a buyer of 4,500 of the May 16 calls, 95 cents. That looks like it might have been a total of 10,000 of those, all at 95 cents when the stock was 13.77. Now the stock now is 13.86. I just looked at the where the metrics are percentile wise, and the stock is at exactly the 50th percentile in terms of the number of observations. So on the range for this thing from $9 to $20, we are dead center, I think I have some friends that play this name that really do keep a close eye on Uber and Lyft. It's up. Lyft is up 8% today right now, so it's a decent little move to begin with. But this is a pretty decent chunk of bullish flow in Lyft that again I'll keep a pretty good eye on.
All right, listeners, and we always keep an eye on your questions and your feedback. It is time for a little bit of the old mail block.
It's time to take your seat on the All-Star panel as we read your emails, tweets, Facebook messages, website comments, and much more. It's time for the Mail Block.
All right, let's get to the mail block. We had Frank in our live chat mentioning those Feb 72 puts for Palantir. Yeah, I had those on my docket as well, Frank. This was from last week, I believe. We put up a flash poll. We saw that big print of the Feb 72 puts expiring tomorrow in Palantir. They went up for 16 cents. The stock obviously much higher. We thought it was kind of a crazy print, indicative of the madness that was going up in Palantir. We thought we'd ask you folks, at that price, are you a buyer? Are you a seller? Are you just not interested? And nearly half of you, 45.8%, said you wanted to buy them. 20.8% said you would sell them. And exactly a third, 33.3%, said, you know what? Palantir is a little bit too wild for me. I'm going to sit on the sidelines for this one. And the nearly half that wanted to buy them, we flirted with downside, obviously, in Palantir. Not quite to the 72 handle, unless it falls out of bed by tomorrow. Again, anything's possible. But right now, those are not looking bueno there, Frank. You are correct. In terms of some other questions of the week we have right now, we have a couple that are kind of fighting for your attention out there. The big trend right now in the financial markets, brought back, of course, by Schwab expanding a lot of their 24-hour trading to a lot of their retail clients. So we thought maybe it's time to investigate that again. We asked you that about a year ago. Do you want options to trade 24/7? And almost 70% of you said no. Time to revisit that. Quite simply, should options trade around the clock? Heck yes, heck no. Or forget 24/5. I'm all in, baby. I want 24/7, 365. And then along those lines, we were just talking about Mara and crypto earlier in our Bitcoin getting shellacked. This question spun off of our got Vernon chiming in again with his hilarity. But this came off of our crypto rundown show from Monday. Just the big shellacking that is going on out there across the board in the crypto space right now. We said, gun to your head, if you had to buy and hold one crypto asset for the rest of 2025, which one are you choosing? We gave you the big three and the infamous other. So Bitcoin, ETH, Solana, and then other. We've already had write-ins for Doge and a bunch of other ones. I like Vernon here. He said, I'm all in with Naughty Coin because sooner or later the crypto market is going to screw me. Yeah, maybe. Sounds like you should be a member of Uncle Mike's BitcoinReallySucks.com. But a lot going on out there. I'll reveal the results in a second. First, Uncle Mike, you can weigh in if you like on the crypto poll, even though I know it is anathema to you. But more importantly, on our 24-hour trading poll, do you think our audience wants options to trade 24/5? Yes or no? Or do they want to go full 24/7, sir? And what's your vote?
I mean, I think the audience wants it 24/7, but I mean, as of right now, I would say no, just because I don't see it working. I think that just I said it on the previous show, if you just look at bid-ask spreads on SPY, like right after a Fed announcement, they're not exactly a penny wide. And my thought is that if you're not able to get SPY bid-ask spreads a penny wide right after a Fed announcement, I don't see any way that you're going to get liquidity or a good tradable market during earnings announcements after the market. If they can do it, great. I'm not a floor trader. I've never traded on the floor, so I can't speak from the standpoint of expertise that way. If they could make it work, I would love to see it. I think it would be a great thing if they could make it work. I just don't see it working because what most people are looking for are to trade earnings announcements after or before the market, and I just don't think it'll work. But I could be wrong.
Mr. Flowmaster, same questions for you. If you want to weigh in, gun to your head, which crypto asset you want to buy or think our audience wants to buy, have at it. And then more importantly, what are you feeling on the whole 24-hour options debate? Are you yay or nay? Which way do you think our audience is going?
Well, in the crypto world, I have a little bit of a couple different things. I'll tell you, it's funny. I lost my wallet keys. You hear those stories, and then I finally found it. And when I lost it, Solana was around 250, and I have a little bit of that. And then when I finally found it, Solana was 140. So not that I would have necessarily thought to get out, but we have at SIBA, we have this Bitcoin ETF index. MBTX is the ticker, and it's specifically tracks all of the Bitcoin ETFs. So it basically, if Bitcoin goes up 1%, the index goes up 1% because those ETFs go up 1%. And we're actually seeing some volume pick up in there, especially coming from some of these overriding ETFs. So, you rather than kind of picking one of the ETFs, IBIT is the biggest of all of them, but this actually kind of gets you, an instrument that tracks it, and it's cash settled, which people like. So, I think people are really sticking to the kind of those big headline products, the Bitcoin, the ETH, the SOL. In terms of the 24-hour trading, I agree with Mike. I'm a little concerned about the fragmentation of liquidity and customers having a bad experience in those some of those extended hours. So, SPX and VIX and XSP do trade almost 24 hours. They trade till 5 p.m. and then they start again at 8:15 p.m. New York time and go overnight. And usually the market quality in those is good, but it's never great just because you have so many more participants during the day. And I also like to be able to have some downtime and not think about what's the market doing and what's volatility doing. So I think I think our listeners probably are pushing for 24-hour trading. We will get there eventually, just because it is a global economy and the world gets smaller every year. But I'd like to see some time before we get there. The liquidity really needs to be there first.
Let's see what our audience has to say right now on the crypto question. Surprisingly, nearly 68%, over 2/3 of you, are going the old standby of Bitcoin. Gun to your head, you're buying Bitcoin right now. 13.6% for number 2, Solana, which has been, as the Flowmaster pointed out, whooped a little bit. 11.1% for ETH, 7.4% for other. Like I said, we have write-ins for Doge and Monero and Naughty Coin and all sorts of fun things. Our options-oriented question of the week right now is closer than it has been in the past. In fact, it seems like over the last 24 hours, some 24-hour fans have grokked to our poll, because it was over 60% to start of folks saying no. Now it's down to 44.9% saying heck no. So still, number one is heck no, but heck yes, coming in hot behind it, 38.8%. And then if you add in this growing number, which continues to expand, it was 5%, then it was about 10% yesterday. Now it's 16.3% of you who are uber hardcore say, you forget 24/5, I want 24/7, 365. So obviously you add those two together, and now you're talking about 55% of you are definitely all in on 24-hour trading, and some of you even want 24/7. So interesting. Maybe the worm turning out there as we keep on turning right on into Around the Block.
It's time to tell you what we'll be watching on our trading screens until the next episode. It's time for Around the Block.
All right, everybody, welcome to Around the Block. Let's get out there, see what everybody's paying attention to until our next episode. Uncle Mike, we shall start with you, sir.
Well, I think that what we need to watch is see we're within 3% of an all-time high of the markets, seeing how tightly held this magnet we call 6,000 is in the S&P 500. Now that NVIDIA earnings are out, I'm going to be curious to see how volatility comes down or comes up. You never know with that. And from there, just seeing what stocks do what, in that some have been up, some have been down, and seeing how all of this rotation is going to play out in the overall picture.
And Mr. Flowmaster, what are you keeping an eye on until your next appearance next week, sir?
Well, I do want to say that we rolled out a video podcast of our own called Tales of the Tape. So if you Google SIBO Tales of the Tape, you can subscribe. You can get it on Spotify and Apple. And I got to be the first guest on the podcast, so I was very proud of that. I'm going to be watching volatility and skew. We're at an interesting point, right? We could kind of come back in a couple points, or we could see things go 6, 7, 8 points higher. I think that as we turn the page into March, we might get a little bit of a rebound. But I'm just going to be kind of watching, and maybe I might take a little nibble at Bitcoin via some calls in our Bitcoin index, just because.
Look at you cheating on me with other podcasts, sir. How dare you? How dare you going on these other shows? I'll let that one slide. And if folks want to check out, dare I say it, this other show, or perhaps some of the cool analytics you and the crew are always whipping up, where should they go? What should they do?
Just head over to SIBO.com/RMA. That's Risk and Market Analytics, where we show off all of our data platforms. You can request a trial, and we are happy to set you up.
Check him out. You can also check out his video podcast if you really want to see Henry's face over there. It all begins in the hallowed halls of SIBO.com, listeners. And Mr. Uncle Mike, where should folks go if they want to debate ETH or Bitcoin or NVIDIA or any of this fun stuff with you, sir?
Give me a call. Check me out on my website, stcharleswealth.com. Set an appointment. I will give you a call. I love talking to all of our listeners. And follow me on Twitter at Mike Tusaw, TOSAW.
Give the man a follow over there on the old Twitter. That's going to do it for us on the old OB. Not going to do it for us on the network, though. Not by a long shot. Back again in a little bit to rip apart the world of futures options on TWIFO. I will be joined by Brett Friedman, the managing partner over there, Winhall Risk Analytics and indeed Option Metrics. Should be a fun time. What's going to make it on the show? You got to tune in to TWIFO to find out, listeners. Back again tomorrow for a double header. I will be joined by the Oracle of New Hampshire there on volatility views, and then back for double duty right after that on Options Oddities. So if you're not part of the pro yet, what the heck are you waiting for? Welcome to all the new names who have been joining us out there. It's going to be a good time tomorrow, so strap in for some madness. Vol views and then oddities. Then, of course, we're back again on Monday. Another episode of the Option Block. Stay safe out there, everybody.
The Option Block is brought to you by SIBO. SIBO's suite of S&P 500 index options, SPX and mini S&P 500 XSP options, allows traders to speculate on the direction of the market, generate income, and hedge for downside protection of their portfolio of stocks. No matter what kind of trader you are, there's plenty of useful information to take the guesswork out of creating your portfolio strategy and to help you make more educated moves in the market. Visit www.sibo.com/SPX today to learn more. The views expressed herein are those of the speakers and do not necessarily reflect the views of CBOE Global Markets Incorporated or any of its subsidiaries, collectively CBOE. The information provided is for general education and information purposes only. There are important risks associated with transacting in any of the CBOE products or any of the digital assets discussed here. Before engaging in any transactions in those products or digital assets, it is important for market participants to carefully review the disclosures and disclaimers contained at www.cboe.com/US_disclaimers. These products and digital assets are complex and are suitable only for sophisticated market participants. These products involve the risk of loss, which can be substantial and, depending on the type of product, can exceed the amount of money deposited in establishing the position. Market participants should put at risk only funds they can afford to lose without affecting their lifestyle. You're listening to the Options Insider Radio Network, the home of the Options Podcast. For more quality options programs, visit theoptionsinsider.com or search for Options Insider Radio Network in your podcast provider of choice. Listeners can also access all of our programming through our mobile app available in the iTunes and Google Play stores. Select programs are also available via live stream at mixlr.com/options-insider. That's mixlr.com/options-insider. Don't forget to follow along with your favorite programs and submit your own questions for the hosts at twitter.com/options, stocktwits.com/options, facebook.com/theoptionsinsider, or via questions at theoptionsinsider.com.